People often search for external enemies without realizing their own voice has already armed their rivals. The danger doesn't come from strangers in the dark, but from familiar rooms where your words are replayed, dissected, and turned into evidence. A single offhand comment you thought was harmless becomes ammunition in someone else's arsenal. A careless joke can shift from humor to incrimination. A moment of disclosure that once felt like intimacy can evolve into a chain around your freedom. The illusion is that speech vanishes once spoken, that air swallows sound and leaves nothing behind. But nothing fades as quickly or as permanently as we believe. Words are stored in memory, written in private notes, shared in whispers, and repeated in rooms where you have no presence. Believing otherwise is a modern hallucination, one that convinces people they are safe while silently constructing their downfall. Leaders, innovators, and friends have all been undone not by foreign conspiracies, but by their own inability to silence themselves at the right moment. Entire kingdoms have weakened because one conversation traveled beyond intended ears. Every collapse begins not with action but with an echo. Those who understood this truth centuries ago held their tongues as though life depended on it. Today, many forget that your tongue can become both your executioner and your greatest guard. Niccolò Machiavelli devoted his studies to the flow of influence, the fragility of power, and the craft of self-preservation. And his writings repeatedly warned, speech is destiny and lack of restraint is ruin. He understood that mastery begins not with conquering others, but with conquering the impulse to reveal more than necessary. Control over your voice is control over your trajectory, while indulgence in constant expression invites destruction disguised as freedom. The real prison is not silence but carelessness, for the latter chains you to outcomes you could have avoided. To prove this, consider how situations unfold in everyday life. There are psychological triggers that lure you into revealing more than you intended. Moments when emotion, pride, or pressure pry open your defenses. If ignored, these traps transform your mouth into your executioner. What feels like a harmless release, whether anger, victory, alcohol, stress, or sympathy, becomes the very mechanism through which you are dismantled. People repeat mistakes because they treat these events as temporary, when in truth they carve permanent impressions. The wise learn to identify these moments before the damage begins. Mastery is not about constant silence, but strategic silence, knowing when speech strengthens you and when it exposes you. Consider carefully. For every sentence is either a brick in your fortress or a crack in your foundation. The difference lies not in intention but in timing, restraint, and awareness. One of the most common snares is anger. Fury does not invent new truths. It drags buried truths out into the open. Rage disables filters and replaces careful thought with unrestrained confession. That sudden outburst reveals resentments long buried, fears carefully disguised, and grievances silently stacked over the years. The person who provokes you has essentially unlocked a vault, and you become their own informant. They do not need to question you, for your fury pours information without hesitation. Worse still, the very act of anger becomes predictable. Once someone knows what awakens your fire, they have a button they can press at will, guiding your reactions like a puppet on invisible strings. This is why seasoned manipulators need not fight you directly. They simply guide you into detonating your credibility with your own words. What matters most is not even the insult you throw or the revelation you make, but who hears it. Anger spoken once is remembered endlessly. What you considered temporary is archived as permanent. The truth is simple. Anger parades as strength but operates as weakness. The powerful do feel it, but they rarely display it. They learn to process fury behind closed doors and respond with measured action rather than verbal eruption. The explosion you think asserts dominance is in fact a gift to adversaries who now possess evidence of your lack of discipline. Another peril lies in triumph. Success has a peculiar intoxication that rivals the strongest liquor. When achievement comes, ego insists on recognition. It pushes you to tell your story, explain your strategies, and bask in the applause of those around you. Yet every detail you reveal becomes a manual for your competitors. When you explain how you won, you are not inspiring others. You are teaching them how to defeat you. Rivals do not marvel at your brilliance. They disassemble it, analyze it, and reconstruct it against you. That speech you deliver to highlight your cleverness becomes their map for your replacement. Even intelligent leaders fall into this trap, seduced by the need to narrate their own greatness. They forget that the most enduring power is not the celebrated one, but the concealed one. Victory, when paraded, weakens itself because it shifts from mystery to transparency. What others cannot see, they cannot counter. The moment you articulate the source of your strength, you invite others to duplicate it or dismantle it. The wise celebrate inwardly, reveal little, and understand that explanation is not loyalty, but leakage. The applause you seek may cost you the very victories you work to achieve. Silence, in contrast, preserves your advantage. Equally destructive is intoxication of another kind. Alcohol. A glass may feel like relief, but each sip loosens the barriers that guard your secrets. Liquor doesn't invent betrayals, it unlocks them. Inhibitions collapse and speech flows with reckless abandon. The confidences you thought would remain sealed slip out between laughs and toasts. Skilled manipulators know this and ensure you drink more than you intended, guiding conversations toward areas where your tongue will betray you. The problem isn't simply the drunken night, but the sober morning, when your words remain remembered while your memory has evaporated. That careless admission about a failing business deal, that confession about private struggles, that casual joke about loyalty, all return to haunt you. What you called relaxation becomes evidence in the hands of others. In a world saturated with devices that can record, replay, and broadcast, every drunken confession risks permanence. Discipline means choosing clarity over temporary escape, the strongest refuge to exchange lasting safety for fleeting connection. What appears harmless in the moment can undo years of careful effort. Pressure reveals another dimension of exposure. Stress breaks the protective mask people wear in calmer times. When deadlines mount and expectations intensify, the cracks begin to show. In these moments, individuals often confess weakness not because they want to, but because they crave relief. They reveal failures, admit doubts, and expose inadequacies. To the listener, this is not bonding, it is intelligence gathering. The family member who hears of your workplace struggle may share it innocently, but once it spreads, your reputation is stained. The colleague who listens with sympathy may later use it to question your competence. The danger is that what you considered authenticity is interpreted as fragility. Those who collapse under stress inspire neither respect nor loyalty, only doubt. Machiavelli warned that to be effective, one must often choose fear over love. But when you break under pressure, you inspire neither. The difference between survival and collapse lies not in the presence of stress, but in your response to it. Those who master composure turn pressure into an opportunity, exposing the weakness of others while hiding their own. Those who fail become their own betrayers. Equally subtle yet devastating is the sympathy trap. Not every emotional disclosure is innocent. Manipulators often wear the mask of vulnerability, spinning stories of hardship designed not to gain help but to unlock your guard. In your eagerness to play savior, you expose secrets, strategies, and vulnerabilities. Real vulnerability is messy, unpolished, and rarely convenient. Performed vulnerability, however, is clean, persuasive, and timed to perfection. The one who tells a perfect sob story is not sharing truth but baiting prey. Compassion, if careless, turns into currency that others spend against you. The more you reveal to comfort them, the more power you grant them over you. What you thought was kindness becomes your undoing. True mastery involves helping without bleeding information, offering compassion without surrendering advantage. Otherwise, you become an open book in a world that rewards secrecy. The social realm introduces another battlefield. Gossip. Conversations in casual groups seem harmless, yet every sentence is currency in the hidden marketplace of information. Words travel upward to those in power and downward to those eager to betray. In this exchange, the one who listens and collects rises, while the one who speaks too freely sinks. Information brokers thrive in every circle. They appear trustworthy, nod encouragingly, and ask for your thoughts, yet their true purpose is to harvest secrets for trade. The danger lies not merely in what you say about others, but in what your gossip reveals about you. The more you share, the more you demonstrate unreliability. Reputation is shaped less by achievements than by consistency. Every careless disclosure erodes the perception of discretion, branding you as someone unsafe to trust. What begins as idle talk becomes a permanent indictment of your judgment. Power also tests individuals through authority traps. When challenged unfairly, instinct demands explanation. You want to argue, to justify, to prove worth. Yet authority does not seek truth. It seeks submission. Tests come disguised as conflicts, measuring whether you can endure criticism without collapse. Each defensive word you speak becomes further proof of weakness. Arguments intended to clear your name instead highlight your inability to remain composed. Power operates outside the bounds of justice. It does not play by your rules of fairness. It rewards results, not rhetoric. Those who adapt to this reality hold influence. Those who cling to idealistic expectations fall. The wiser path is quiet compliance in the moment, followed by excellence in performance. Results speak louder than self-defense. The respect you desire cannot be argued into existence. It must be earned in outcomes. Finally, betrayal invites its own temptation. Revenge through revelation. When relationships fracture, you often possess devastating knowledge about the other. The lure is to expose, to strike back by revealing their hidden flaws. Yet the weapon cuts both ways. Every relationship is a two-way intelligence exchange. By exposing theirs, you remind the world that you cannot be trusted with secrets. Future allies observe your behavior and silently judge whether they could ever depend on your discretion. By wounding one, you wound your own reputation far more. Revenge satisfies in the moment but scars forever. What feels like justice becomes evidence of your unreliability. Silence once again proves to be the higher weapon. Strength is not in the destruction of others, but in the preservation of your own credibility. The hidden danger in revealing secrets for revenge is not the blow you strike against the one who wronged you, but the shadow it casts over your own character for years to come. Once people see that you're capable of weaponizing private knowledge when emotions run high, they stop trusting you with anything meaningful. The trust you spent years building dissolves instantly, leaving your credibility hollow. What many fail to recognize is that silence has a sharper edge than exposure. Ancient observers of human nature noted that punishment, if necessary, should arrive in a sudden and decisive manner, but generosity must arrive slowly, so it lingers. This is a principle of strategy as much as human behavior. If you feel compelled to respond to betrayal, the wiser path is to take actions that cannot be traced back to personal disclosures. Maintain your reputation for discretion, even as you settle scores through indirect maneuvers. What you hold back now becomes leverage later, and what you release in anger becomes waste. Those who play the long game preserve secrets not as gifts but as weapons waiting for the right battlefield. Their silence is not weakness but power disguised as restraint. True masters do not spend their currency of information at the first opportunity. They stockpile it, knowing one preserved truth can be worth more than a dozen revealed confessions. The most skillful leaders let their silence serve as the most effective punishment, because nothing unsettles adversaries more than realizing they cannot predict what you know, when you will act, or how far your reach extends. That is why the affirmation worth carrying forward is simple. Silence itself is the sharpest revenge. In another form of self-destruction, people try to mask insecurity through exaggerated displays of competence. This act is nothing more than a stage performance where the actor is also the audience. When you feel small, your mouth compensates by making you appear larger. But the irony is that the louder you try to seem capable, the more obvious your uncertainty becomes. You drop names to imply connections, over-explain simple ideas to appear wise, interrupt conversations to project authority, all while proving the opposite of what you seek. Instead of admiration, you generate amusement. What you believe to be strength looks to others like frantic scrambling. Confidence that requires constant advertisement is counterfeit by definition. Genuine expertise never needs a spotlight. It shows itself in results and outcomes, not in speeches. Predictability is the most dangerous consequence of this theater. Once others learn what triggers your need to prove yourself, they can orchestrate your downfall with ease. By challenging your ego in small ways, they make you talk too much, reveal sensitive information, or commit to foolish decisions. The theater of competence is not harmless roleplay. It's a script that makes you easy to manipulate. History reminds us that greatness always demands risk, but the greater danger lies in undermining yourself through empty performances. Insecurity transforms into weakness the moment you broadcast it. Those who rise above this trap allow their achievements to build their reputation silently, knowing that recognition eventually arrives to those who deserve it, while desperation only exposes fragility. Another trap that destroys credibility is the prison of promises. When expectations corner you and resources are scarce, your instinct is to use words as currency. Promises offer temporary relief because they delay accountability. A commitment spoken today pushes pressure into tomorrow. But every vow you make without the capacity to fulfill it becomes a debt, and debts compound with interest. Soon your words lose weight, not because people doubt promises in general, but because they doubt yours. The psychology of promise-making is addictive. It costs nothing in the moment to assure someone that you'll deliver, change, or rise to the occasion. But the bill always arrives later, and it demands payment and trust. Each broken pledge becomes evidence that your reliability is paper-thin. Each unmet guarantee highlights that you would rather appease now than perform later. A reputation for hollow commitments is far harder to repair than a reputation for saying little. Grand declarations may earn temporary applause, but when reality fails to match rhetoric, the same audience becomes your jury. Wise operators take the opposite approach. They commit to less than they can do, then deliver more than they promised. This creates an aura of dependability, where others learn that your word means more than most. Empty vows are castles built on mud, foundations that crumble under the slightest pressure. Strategic individuals prefer to build on stone, fewer commitments, stronger outcomes, and credibility that compounds over time instead of decaying. Your entire life has been marked by this subtle betrayal of your own mouth. In conversation after conversation, you may have handed away insights, weaknesses, and strategies that others stored away quietly. Words, unlike actions, can travel across years, returning at the exact moment when they will harm you most. What many fail to understand is that social interaction is never neutral. It is either a move in a complex chess match or a misstep that places your king in check. Careless statements, casual promises, angry confessions, all are pawns that opponents reposition against you. The traps outlined here are not rare exceptions. They unfold daily, often in the smallest exchanges. A careless word spoken in irritation today can resurface in a meeting years later. A promise made to impress becomes the accusation of betrayal when unfulfilled. Those who survive and thrive are not necessarily smarter or luckier, but they are disciplined. They know that language is never without consequence, and silence is never without value. The unspoken can protect, while the spoken can expose. History's sharpest minds understood this principle. Niccolò Machiavelli observed that the fabric of life is not woven by ideals but by strategy, not by fairness but by discipline. The winners of power struggles are rarely those who speak their truth, as modern slogans suggest. They are the ones who control their minds long enough to filter their tongues. Every word shapes your trajectory, either building fortresses of trust or dismantling them brick by brick. Every pause before speaking is an opportunity to weigh whether sound will strengthen or weaken your position. In a world where nearly everything is stored, recorded, and replayed, verbal discipline is no longer optional. It is survival. Words have always been tools of influence, but in the digital age, they are also permanent records that echo indefinitely. What you speak in seconds may follow you for decades. The most successful individuals throughout history have demonstrated this mastery. They were not the loudest voices in the room. Often, they were the ones who spoke least and listened most. They recognized that silence confuses enemies, while constant chatter informs them. They knew that patience allows opportunities to ripen, while impulsiveness harvests regret. Their influence expanded not through explaining themselves endlessly, but through letting actions illustrate their worth. Strategic communication does not mean avoiding speech forever. It means aligning words with outcomes. It means refusing to hand weapons to adversaries through careless disclosure. It means whispering when whispers serve you, and speaking only when speech creates undeniable advantage. The choice now rests in your hands. Will you let your mouth remain a saboteur that undermines your progress? Or will you master the discipline of communication that has elevated the powerful for centuries? Every careless conversation you allow is a favor to those who would like to see you stumble. Every restrained word is a fortress wall built higher. Decide whether you want to keep feeding rivals with your own disclosures, or whether you want to rise into the company of those who let mystery shield their intentions. True strength doesn't scream, it calculates. Weakness doesn't whisper, it shouts. Your future will either be a monument to strategic silence or a cautionary tale about loose tongues. In this age of constant surveillance where everything can be replayed, quoted, and reshaped into a weapon, the mastery of your speech may be the single skill that determines your survival. So consider carefully. Each word is either a blade aimed outward or a dagger turned inward. You are the guardian of your own reputation, and the tongue is both the lock and the key. Control it, and destiny bends in your favor. Fail to, and the very voice you trust will hand victory to your enemies. The person who learns this lesson soon enough does not just avoid destruction. They inherit influence others cannot comprehend. That is the art of power, never in noise, always in control.